I actually turned mine before. Yeah.
I overlaid it.
Because I know actually I thought about it. This one, like, whatever happened?
Oh, yeah, that's right.
I'll call the meeting of the McHenry County Zoning Board of Appeals to order. The purpose for our hearing today is application Z260010. The applicant is McHenry Solar Farm LLC. The request is for a conditional use permit to allow for a commercial solar energy facility. There are two PIN numbers associated with this application. They are 1409-100-001 and 1408-200-002. The property consists of roughly 37 acres and is located on the west side of South Crystal Lake Road, approximately 1,500 feet north of the intersection of Mason Hill and South Crystal Lake Roads in Nunda Township, Illinois. I'll have the Zoning Board of Appeals members introduce themselves and the township in which they reside, starting on my left.
Robert Cozen, Algonquin Township.
Mary Donner, Greenwood Township.
I'm Linnea Kustra in Alden Township.
Vicki Gardner, Nunda Township.
Kurt Schnabel, Riley Township.
Bill Kernick, Grafton Township.
This petition has been reviewed and the following items have been received prior to today's scheduled hearing. The publisher's certificate of publication from a newspaper is dated March 27, 2026, and thereby meets ordinance requirements. Affidavit of posting was signed and the date posted was April 6, 2026, also meeting ordinance requirements. The affidavit of mailing was signed and the date mailed was March 25, 2026, and thereby meets ordinance requirements. The survey has been checked against the petition, the legal notice, and the publication in the newspaper, and all three match. The filing fees have been paid. The endangered species consultation has been received. The McHenry County Soil and Water Conservation District report has also been received, and this is NRI 260014784. For those of you who've never been to a zoning hearing before, this is a quasi-judicial hearing. Rules of testimony apply. The first part of the hearing is the petitioner will present their evidence to the board, why they believe that this should be granted. They will be asked questions by the board and then by staff. And then if anyone, a member of the public, has a question regarding their testimony here today, you're allowed 3 minutes to ask questions regarding their testimony. You'll be under oath. Anyone who asks questions or makes a statement will be under oath. And so at this time, I will just say if anyone is contemplating asking a question or will be giving testimony today, I will go ahead and swear you in right now. Would you everyone raise their right hand if you contemplate speaking? Do you affirm that the testimony you give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? You do. So that you'll be at, I'll use the timer on my phone. You can use your 3 minutes and all your questions if you're worried that you'll run out of time before they give the answers. And then that's not a time for comments. You'll have an opportunity later in the hearing for that. So after you ask the questions, then staff will give their report. And then at that time, if anyone has a statement they would like to give for this, you'll have the opportunity to give a statement. But before we start, I just want Kim to give us an update just on the powers that we have and do not have as a county zoning board.
Sure. So on January 27th, 2023, the state of Illinois did pass Public Act 102-1123, which states that a request for a conditional use permit for a commercial solar energy facility shall be approved if the request is in compliance with the standards and conditions imposed within the act, the zoning ordinance adopted consistent with this code, and the conditions imposed under state and federal statutes and regulations. The county may not adopt zoning regulations that disallow commercial solar energy facilities from being developed or operated in any district zone to allow agricultural or industrial uses. So essentially, if the proposed solar facility does comply with the statute requirements that were outlined by the state, then the county does have an obligation to approve those facilities.
Okay, so at this time, we will want any anyone from the petitioner, if you're going to speak, because this is being recorded, I would want you to identify yourself, and so that the recording, they'll be able to tell who is speaking, who is presenting the evidence. So I will turn it over to whoever's in charge. Please state your name and your position with the company, and we'll hear your report.
Thank you. My name is Bob McNeil. I am the Development Project Manager for McHenry Solar Farm and Surrey Power. Our presentation today mimics a lot of the solar project or presentations you've seen, but we've tried to tailor it to answer some specific questions and that I've seen pop up. I've reviewed all of the zoning board hearings for denials and approvals and whatnot. I don't claim it to be complete, but we did the best job we could. We have two consultants here with us that will answer some specific questions, and I'll turn it over to them when we get to their topics. One is Bob Walker from Bono Consulting. Some of you are familiar with him, I'm sure. The other is Colin McDonald and from our environmental consultant, Baxter and Woodman, which in the Natural Resources Department or Division. To get right to it, and I'm not going to try to go through every line of every bit of the text you're going to see, or we'll be here for quite a while. I have an annoying habit of typing too much, as my wife constantly reminds me. However, find this. First off, we have the existing conditions. We've tried to locate where the non-participating properties are and the particular zoning they have. The existing use has been agricultural land and row crops. It has a slope from the southeast to the northwest, basically from 826 to 784. Those are rounded figures. It has limited wetlands and tree coverage, and it's between 3,000 and 4,000 feet from any nearby conservancy or natural areas. And it has a very low probability of any archaeological or cultural resources. It does lie in an area that calls for enhanced groundwater protection under the county code. This is our site plan. But as was said previously, about 37 acres. We have a 6.5 megawatt AC capability. We originally applied for 5 megawatts, but under the Clean and Reliable Grid Affordability Act, which was passed earlier this year, we are allowed to increase that up to 10. This site is not really capable of handling more than 6.5, so that's what our application has been amended to deal with. We have delineated 4 wetlands, total less than 1 acre. We'll be discussing that later. Our site plan addresses the setbacks with the dimensions that are shown. We will be providing a gated access road, roughly about 27,600 square feet. There will be an 8-foot perimeter agricultural fencing with approximately 6-inch space at the base to allow for migration of ground level animals. The impervious surface total is approximately 1.82%, and the roughly about 28,900 square feet. This will be subject to some variability as we get into the construction permit process, but generally that's a ballpark figure to start with. There will be approximately 15,600 plus solar modules on the site. There will be 2 equipment pads located in the, I can figure out which button it is. No.
There's a red line.
But anyway, they're in the corners, basically right above the 2 wetlands on the east side of the property. And in later slides, you'll see them highlighted with a beautiful orange dot and some nice orange lines that will delineate the distance from the non-participating properties estimated for that. We will be using transformers and inverters, roughly 52 inverters, again, possibly subject to change, but not by a tremendous amount. We will have a cabling system used on the property, which will minimize the amount of underground trenching that we will have to do in the actual solar area where the modules are located. There will be trenching in some locations, and there will be overhead connections to the point of interconnection in the southeast corner. McHenry County has some various site criteria that we have to comply with. I've summarized in my own words what the project must meet, and I have our response up there on the right-hand side. You'll see that we feel we're demonstrating substantial compliance with any of the applicable standards, and we have a commitment to negotiate or to incorporate any conditions of approval and or changes that might result from the construction process and the site plan review process. And we feel that we meet the second requirement there because we're permitted conditional use in the A1 zoning district. The future land use plans for the site, as far as we can tell, call for estate residential. And I would stress that this is, albeit a 30-year tenure, it is an interim use. And at the end of that time, the property can revert to estate residential. It could revert to, depending on the conditions in 30 years from now, could be a prime spot for some commercial on the frontage with estate residential behind. That would be obviously up to the county board and the staff to determine at that time. The next criteria involve whether or not it is detrimental to essentially the public health. We have emphasized what we feel is responsible design, and we have mitigated all of our aesthetic impacts that we could through perimeter landscaping and wetland buffers. We will be using pollinator-friendly plantings that are of tremendous value. They will actually help restore the soil to a much greater extent than the current row crop typically would do. And we feel we do meet this standard, and traditionally across the country, community solar has been proven not to be detrimental or endanger public health. In the second part of the table there, we will incorporate the landscape buffers. You will see a sample of this, and again, all of this is also addressed in the project narrative that we provided as part of our submittal in much more detail. Next one is a question that comes up quite often. I'm sure you've seen it and expected it. It might come up again here today. Property values. There have been a number of studies that have been done, and from our perspective, both nationally and at a state level and even nearby counties, it has been proven that solar projects do not adversely or significantly impact property values. Now, the second part of the table, do we provide for adequate utilities? Well, the only utility solar farm requires is electricity, so take care of that part. We will provide the gated access drive with turnarounds inside the property and the project that will allow for emergency vehicles to provide access to the site. And at this point, I'd also like to point out that we have provided the McHenry Township Fire Protection District with copies of the site plan and received comments back, which we in turn responded to in detail. And I believe that's also included in our submittal packet as well. So if you have any questions about that, if the answers aren't in there, we can obviously try and get them for you. We have also undertaken as a result of reviewing all of the various processes we've gone through and what you've experienced here in McHenry County, we have developed a series of topical reports, all of which have been included with our submittal to cover a lot of different topics. Everything from drain tile mitigation to unanticipated cultural discoveries, which was a new one even for our people. But I suggest you read those through and you'll see some of the detail that we're trying to do to make this project more compatible with everything that potentially could come up in terms of circumstances. Next is the question, and this is, I'm bringing up again with the discussion with the Fire Protection District. We've also gone as far as, based on the experience we've observed on other solar farms across the country and even on a couple in Europe, the trip generation estimate, which will indicate that there are less than 20 AM or PM peak trips, which in our way of thinking does not justify a need for a traffic impact study. There will be areas on site that will be devoted to employee parking and storage of materials, and there will be no parking on adjacent roadways.
And this is only during construction, correct?
Yes, yes. The project is essentially will be supervised remotely for the 24/7, 365 throughout the operation life cycle of the project. There will be maintenance vehicles that will come for mowing or equipment replacement or testing, but there will only be 1 or 2 of them, and I'd be shocked if there were more than 4 people on site at a given time. They will be able to use the on-site turnaround and parking areas that will be made available for those purposes. The second part of the table deals with the applicable zoning regulations. As I mentioned before, it's our intent to fully comply or conform with those regulations. We feel we've done that. And the last part of these evaluation criteria is essentially addressing the public interest and the design elements and how it supports that. We focused on wetland preservation and access, public safety, etc. And it does support and enhance the production of renewable energy, which will support and help out the environment. Local economic development activity will be enhanced, and there will be taxing revenues significantly that will be realized by the various, I think it's 8 taxing districts over the next 30 years. Roughly 1.2 million. There's a slide later that gives you an exact number of breakdown. We've done all of this with an eye on what's called the LaSalle factors. These have been issues that have been raised in various courts. I'm not going to go through all of these, but the slide, the portion of the table on the left gives you a pretty good summary of what it is. Each one of those tests, as we call them, have to be met. We feel we meet these tests, and we're confident that examination of our materials and our eventual construction plans will allow that to continue. Now, as I mentioned before, I've gone through all of your various hearings, as probably last 6, 8 months, whatever, and we've identified a number of issues that have come up repeatedly. We're going to try and meet them head on. And there may be some questions about it, but we'll give it a shot and see what happens here. First one is our due diligence. That's probably the easy one. This is the topical reports I'm talking about. There's 8 of them. Drain tile mitigation, stormwater, landscape maintenance, and monitoring plan are, as I mentioned, a trip generation estimate. We're also providing a preliminary operation and maintenance plan and guidelines. We've prepared an emergency response plan. We have a decommissioning plan and a cost projection. And as I mentioned, the unanticipated discovery plan, which is something I ran into in Washington State quite often. And it'll address the unanticipated discovery of any architectural, cultural resources that may happen or may be identified during construction. Property values. There's been a lot of studies that have been taken, undertaken, I should say, about this topic. As I mentioned before, traditionally, almost without exception, they have been found to be statistically indicative of no significant effect on property values. On a couple of occasions, they were even proven to provide increased value. Now, we're not claiming that, but that's what has happened. And these studies that are done by professionals, they use a couple of different methods to identify and study this and measure it, and one of the most frequently used is the paired sales analysis. I'm not a real estate consultant, but I've read through all of them, and they seem to indicate a good, how can I put it, academic background to justify their findings. And there have been several that have been done on projects in surrounding counties. You may have had a couple done here. I know Kane County has several done by Cohn-Resnick, and you'll see on the next slide that we're going to provide a couple of other indications that you can do some research on. There are positive environmental impacts that I've hinted at and that we'll discuss in more detail. And there's a lot of perception involving decreased property values that we have to fight when we face this issue. Uncertainty is probably the biggest one, and the aesthetics are the second one. We do everything we possibly can to maximize our aesthetic improvements, particularly along the frontage of the property. And we have these plantings will take time to grow, but you'll see a little bit later. You'll see a example of what they look like at approximately 5 and I think it's 15-year growth patterns. Some of you have seen that slide before from us, but we added a little to it. These are the various studies that have been done. I mentioned specifically Cohn-Resnick because they have done quite a few of them in Illinois and Indiana with consistently the same result. Loyola University and the University of Michigan have also done studies regarding this with reinforcing the professionals, if you will, from the academic side. And the Illinois Department of Revenue provides a mandated valuation methodology that all of these studies have to use. So it's consistent across the board. It's not like one person can do it measuring apples and the other one oranges. We've heard from some people that electromagnetic fields are going to be a problem. The simple answer is no, that's not necessarily true. Every electronic equipment does produce some electromagnetic radiation, if you will. But in our case, the radiation that is produced it varies by the source, proximity, and duration. The sources on our site will be essentially from the equipment pads. That's where the inverters and the transformers are located. And typically, the exposure is not an issue. We try to locate our equipment pads as far away from any residential property as we possibly can to account for this. We have given you some comparisons there in the measurements produced by a typical inverter and what is produced by your typical electric can opener. And also the proverbial refrigerator and microwave. And there are some sources there that we've devolved this information from. Next issue is noise, somewhat related. People have said that the noise from the panels, the noise from the inverters and everything will be a problem. Solar panels are virtually silent. No significant noise is produced. We use tracker panels, and the electric motors that use them have a sound very, very small. It's less than 58 decibels. And they only move as they track the sun. So it's not a constant motion, and it's probably something you would have to stand there for a period of time before you'd even notice what you were hearing. But the inverters are a little noisier, transformers possibly, but you look in the, I don't know if I can't increase there's a table there on the right with the circle by yellow. It provides the measurements, and it identifies them by conversational area and basically background noise. And basically the problem will not exist from the solar panel. This is something new for us. We took it upon ourselves to set out an emergency response plan. It's dedicated to provide a framework that will ensure compliance with all the various codes that we have to deal with, the IBC and IFC from the Fire Code and the NEC with whatever amendments the county has produced or will produce. It basically consists of evacuation protocols, accountability roles and responsibilities for the personnel on site and visitors. And it also commits us to providing the Township Fire Protection District with whatever training they actually need. This, along with some of the other topical plans, are preliminary in nature. I can't stress that enough. These are not finished products. For example, the fire department has not weighed in on this one, but they will. And we will make whatever changes we have to make in accordance with that. In a previous lifetime as a community development director, my rule of thumb was if you're sitting across the table from me and the fire department wants something, you're going to give it to them. And I've told our managing partners that here, so they can expect that. And it's something that is, you can't argue with public safety as a rule. So. But we tried to address as many of the potential contingencies as we can. Some of them are listed there: fire, electrical, medical emergencies, explosions or criminal behavior, chemical spills, and severe weather. A lot of people have some concerns regarding strong winds and solar panels. There have been pictures that have been circulating on the internet, including where I live, of panels that have been lifted off of their brackets. But they show this long range of solar panels, and they show 3 or 4 that got lifted off. The other ones are still there. And it's up to us as operators to come in, replace them, and dispose of them properly and promptly. And that will probably be part of the final plan as to what that time frame may or may not be. And that's, again, negotiable with the fire department. I don't tell them what to do. Solar panels. This is the panel that we are proposing to use. It is a top tier panel. It is made in the USA. South Korea owned, but they have a US-based manufacturing plant in Cartersville, Georgia. And it's, what I understand, they're expanding it to have a second plant, coming up. I don't know if that's going to be open by the time we have to deal with it or not, but we'll get there. The conversion rates and the power retention are significantly attractive for us. The power retention is over 85% after 25 years of service. And as the technology grows and gets better, all of these figures could go up. But again, we don't know what the future will bring. But if the past is any indication, it will happen. Next is the question of groundwater. We've heard things about panels leaching all kinds of materials in there and polluting the groundwater, etc. The only hazardous material used in this Q-cell solar panel is lead. It is used to solder the various panel components into place. I've indicated there a particular, how can I put it, construction diagram, if you will, of what the typical panel looks like. That may not mirror exactly what panel we have, but it's fairly typical. The hazardous material used has typically been less than 1/100th of a percent lead. Older panels have been as low as 12 to 14 grams, which is typically an amount that is less than your car battery. The EPA has undertaken a lot of review of these panels recently, and they are assuming that a new rule is revised and passed by August 27. The disposal of all solar panels will be considered as universal waste, not hazardous waste. That's an important consideration to have. It's not here yet, but the EPA is supposedly considering a rule in February, and in typical government, typical government inaction, if you will, it's going to take through August to get that, next year to get that done. Now, the next slide I have is a sort of a quick summary of the the NRI report that was prepared by the Soil and Water Conservation District. It was done in January in 59 pages that I wouldn't even begin to discuss here. But I will stress again that in view of the land use scores and our land use plans and the LISA scores, this is an interim use. It is not going to be a permanent fixture on the site. There are minimal impacts on the immediate environment. We have been trying to address some of that through the drain tile management plan, mitigation plan, the stormwater management program, and our landscaping, maintenance, and monitoring plan. The unidentified, unanticipated discovery plan, and there are several others that I've just mentioned before. We've summarized some of these with regarding the EcoCat, the consultation with the state. We've had a wetland delineation study and report done on the entire property, not just our portion of it. And also the phase 1 environmental site assessment, all of which pointed us to move forward with this project without any complications. But in case there are complications, specifically related to drainage, that's why we brought the civil engineering muscle here, Bob Walker from Bono Consulting, and we will turn it over to him for a quick review of his slides.
Yes, so my name is Bob Walker, Bono Consulting. It's also CV and Mahar Engineers. We're in the middle of a transition, so it's kind of a name's a little bit kind of goofy there. For a solar facility like this, there will be a stormwater permit, part of the McHenry County permit, or McHenry County stormwater ordinance. So we'll be doing that. It'll be a major development under the ordinance. The project will provide a net benefit to the watershed, so there's no adverse impacts to the neighbors or downstream waterways. We've got over 98% of the plant will be planted in pollinator mix, so you'll create less runoff than row crops. Some of the math there that shows that. Row crops actually have more runoff than the pollinators themselves, so the little bit of added impervious area gets knocked down by the fact that the row crops will infiltrate more water and will actually slow that runoff down. So the next slide there. So stormwater management is not required under the McHenry County Stormwater Ordinance for this site. We are less than 1 acre of proposed impervious area, and it's less than 10% of the contiguous property. We're only at 1.8%. So with that cropland being converted to pollinator blend, our total runoff will be reduced, as we kind of talked about the last slide, so that again, there will not be any flood damage or other drainage downstream. So we are adding about 2/3 of an acre of new impervious surface with the access roads, turnarounds, the equipment pads, and all that type of stuff. Throughout all of my work with solar panels in solar fields, those individual solar panels create what they call disconnected impervious area. So there's no actual increase in runoff from there. The water can flow off the panels and flow underneath the next panel, so it really creates no real difference to what that is. It's more what's under the panels and what the panels themselves are. As a part of the project, we will need a NOI for coverage under that NPDES permit, so we'll have the SWIP plan, all that goes along with that. Overall, site drains to the west towards Boone Creek. There's no off-site flow tributary to this project. And with that, all of our existing overland flood routes we've maintained. We will have soil erosion and sediment control measures, preventing soil and silt and things like that to be from leaving the site. We use silt fence, the vegetative buffers, temporary seeding. A lot of times what we'll do with a solar site like this, you actually seed it first so that you're not driving over top of dirt like it is right now. Would be row crops, that's going to be basically raw dirt. You seed it first so that you're kind of running over grass. You tear up the grass building it, but it's better than leaving it as pure black dirt. As he had talked earlier, there will be a drain tile survey done to be completed, so any damaged tiles will be repaired and replaced. There is a 100-year floodplain. The overall, this property, this is the south part of overall contiguous property. There's a little bit of 100-year floodplain just at the very northwest corner. It's off-site, but it's right next to the site. With where our property is, we're well south of that, so we're well beyond any kind of 100-year floodplain. And as you had mentioned, there's 4 wetlands identified on the project. The proposed improvements will have a 15-foot setback from the wetland boundary, and the wetlands themselves will not be disturbed, so there will be no panels inside of the wetlands themselves. And with the proposed will not have any adverse impacts, and will actually in some ways be better because the pollinator mix will create kind of an additional buffer compared to a row crop that normally would be put inside that same area.
Okay, moving on from the actual civil engineering drainage aspects. Next slide we're getting into involves a topic of some concern to some people in particular. Endangered species. As I mentioned before, we had a EquiCat consultation, and they identified one particular species, the somewhat infamous Blanding's turtle, which seems to wander all over our solar sites. But we have, they did identify some mitigation measures and recommendations that we are going to be following. And again, at the very end there, you'll see if turtles are identified, the first thing we do is stop work. And we deal with them in accordance with the established protocols. And if the measures and mitigation measures and recommendations are implemented, there will be no, I would say, I can't say absolute, but very, very slim chance of any impacts on these potential resources. Now, the next area, we're starting to get into landscaping, and that's not my expertise either. That is what we have Colin McConnell here for, from Baxter and Woodman. I will point out that this clearly identifies where those 4 wetlands are and how big they are. Total is just under an acre, and the largest one is basically about a little over half an acre. And I threw in a little topo map there on the bottom, so you can basically see how the topography of the entire site. And a lot of that topo map is not on our property that we're proposing the site, but you get an idea there of the overall flow patterns. Now, next we're going to get into the landscaping and vegetation, and that's where Colin steps in. And before he does, there's the image I pointed out, the 5 and 15-year mark for a perimeter landscaping. Colin.
Hello, my name is Colin McConnell, Natural Resource Construction Department Manager for Baxter and Woodman. I've been working with wetlands and restoration work for over 20 years. So they kind of brought me on to kind of help with the seeding, the native seeding in between the panels, the screenings around the front and the south areas. And then based on the plans, there's already some existing brush and fence lines. We're just going to trim those up so that they can reduce the shade on the existing. But there's a 50-foot setback from those. So if there's an existing fence line, we're not going to mess with it if it's along a property line to keep that existing screening in place. Okay, so the only proposed screening would be along the road and anywhere that there's not an existing fence line as there is. We're recommending arborvitae type-esque features because they have full screening year-round. I know some solar farms like to use holly and lilacs, but unfortunately the screenings disappear in the wintertime. So to kind of make sure that we're kind of conducive to that, we're going to use primarily, we have the native mixes, but arborvitaes is what we mostly would like to try to recommend, and we're currently installing those in some solar farms right now down in Champaign, and that's what's working down there as well. Most of the native species mixes that we're going to be putting in between all the solar panels have 24-inch to 36-inch root zones, which really help for the infiltration into the water, into the farm fields. Currently, as a farm field, you're basically, the no-till line is about 12 inches, which creates a problem. So what we're going to do is we're going to disc it, till it, and disc it again to make sure we can get that good root zone soil contact when we put the native species in. and that will reduce a lot of the runoff based on the deep root zones that we're going to be putting from the native species. It is also going to be a little bit higher in flower mixes for the pollinators, for the bees and the birds and the animals to enjoy them as well. And most of the maintenance going to be done with these is mowing. Typically on a 3-year native maintenance type of contract, you do have burning. Obviously for this particular site, that is a no-no. So mowing is the form of feature besides random herbiciding, spot treatments to keep out a lot of the teasel, thistle, reed canary grass, anything that would be technically noxious in this type of a restoration type of atmosphere. So we're kind of combining the restoration with the solar panels all at one time.
Okay, now we're going to get to some of the more interesting things, numbers. Tax revenues. As I mentioned before, the tax revenues produced by this farm, solar farm, over the life of the project will be significantly increased. The current annual tax revenue is roughly $1,500 plus. The future annual tax revenue will be over $49,000 per year, coming to a total after depreciation of roughly $1.3 million in increased property tax revenue. That can be of great importance to local jurisdictions that find themselves consistently fighting the budget battle, looking for extra dollars here or there to continue existing programs or possibly fund new ones. But this is one of the significant benefits of the farm, and how those revenues are spent, the secondary impacts could impact everything from social services to economic development and commercial development, depending on how they're used. Now, when we get to the end of the solar project's lifespan, or life cycle, it will be decommissioned. Decommissioning is essentially construction in reverse. Everything will be all of the equipment, all of the access roads, all of the concrete pads, everything, cables and whatnot will be removed, taken off site and recycled if possible or disposed of properly. That can take a period of time that I'd say can be anything from 3 to 6 months, depending on weather, of course. There. We have provided in our submittal package the topical plan that has some cost projections of what those costs might be. Those costs are based and updated somewhat based on our Wonder Lake project that was approved about a year plus ago. So the numbers again can change. They're just a guideline, but they will show what the costs are projected to be at X point in time in the future. And this plan kind of speaks for itself. When we're done with the project, it will be able to be reused either for agricultural purposes, residential developments, or commercial use, whatever, institutional use. That would be up to the current planning needs of the county and the communities at that time. Now the next is one of these summary slides. I'm not going to read through all of these to drive you crazy, but we feel there are significant benefits that, to the county in affordability and sustainability. The ownership, we own the land. We are purchasing the land. We are not leasing the land. So we're on the hook for anything that goes wrong. And if we do sell the project at some point in the future, that obligation will transfer with it. Employment, we try to use local people wherever we can. And typically that's in construction jobs. That can be between 30 and 40. On a permanent basis for maintenance, landscaping, etc., that can be 4, 6, 8, depending on what is necessary to accomplish the goal. Tax revenues, I mentioned that, we just discussed that. Property values, again, no significant adverse impacts to any of the property values are projected. The utility grid locally will be improved. any improvements that ComEd will be making to bring this solar farm online will more than likely be paid by us, unless they get extremely generous in their old age, which I doubt. So we're going to try, this grid should provide a benefit that we are trying to provide with immediately with the solar farm. The benefits will continue for years down the road as you have improved grid resiliency as well as hopefully improved service delivery in case of problems or whatnot. And as I mentioned, economic development. Power is needed. Anybody who's followed the news and seen anything mentioning data centers has seen that power is a key element along with several other items such as water for cooling. Economic development is going to be key for any county to proceed toward its planned growth, whatever that plan may be. This solar farm will be a piece of that puzzle and will help through the environment, with renewable energy, and also with economic development potential. And with that, I'm going to shut up. We're done. Let's ready for questions.
Okay, we'll start with questions on my right. Mr. Koenig.
If you could call up the last slide, please. PowerPoint. I'd just like to go over a couple terms that you have there. First, you talked in the fourth row, you mentioned employment. Can you estimate, the number of employees you will be employing during the project and how long?
Typically, again, it depends from project to project, but it's only basically during construction. And there will be 30 to 40 employees on site, depending, and it varies. There's usually less in the early part, more in the central part of construction, and then less again at the end. And construction can last anywhere from 4 to 6 months, weather permitting, of course.
And you'll be looking for local employees, local individuals for employment?
We always try to work with local employees first.
And what trades will be employed?
Well, obviously electricians are going to be important. Excavators, laborers, heavy equipment operators.
Okay. You mentioned in the top row, community solar facility. This is a community solar facility?
It's a community solar facility. It is not a utility scale facility.
If you could explain to the audience what that is and how people can subscribe, and if you would get a preference to local residents to subscribe.
Well, the subscription process is opened up once the facility comes online, or just before. I'm not exactly sure of the specific time. But typically, subscribers are allowed to sign up. There are a number of firms that are used by local utilities to produce that, or to handle that process. They sign up, they would get anywhere from usually 10 to 15%, in some cases it's as high as 20% discount off of their typical utility bill right now through ComEd. Community solar originated as a concept to basically help out a lot of people that could not afford to put solar panels on their home, could not afford to participate in renewable energy.
Or could not put them on due to local regulations.
Yes, whatever the case. And regulations are changing, and they've changed consistently over the last few years, all the time. But this will allow people that meet one of those criteria there as far as economic or institutional or locational or whatever. This will allow them to subscribe and make that savings, no matter what the amount is, apply to their bill. And community solar is different in the sense that we allow that to occur. Utility solar, generally speaking, is sold directly to the grid. There are some exceptions to that across the country, but typically they will go directly to the grid. They're much larger. There's one, currently, I live in Crete. There's one down there that is 2,400 acres. Will cross 6 or 7 parcels as a utility scale plant.
You're giving me a lot more detail than I usually do.
I'm guilty of that, my
You
wife
said your
will tell
wife
you
says
that
the
as
same
well.
thing, huh?
Yes, I'm sorry, I apologize.
That's all right. So if the people here wish, they could subscribe and have a 10 to 15% reduction in their electric bill.
Yes.
And a 6.5 megawatt facility, how many standard homes would that supply power to annually?
On the low end, we could say basically around 1,300. It could go as high as 15, depending on usage. I mean, obviously, you know, the size of the homes that are out there. Some are larger than others, some are smaller than others, so, but typically it's between 13 and 1,500.
And also benefit to the community would be the tax revenue. I saw the comparison in tax revenue. The increase was about 30 times over what?
32, actually.
Okay, 32. I kind of roughed it in my head.
No.
As far as improvement to the grid, will you be doing any work outside of this area?
ComEd will be
improve the
handling, to my knowledge, ComEd will be handling all of that grid improvement. We just get stuck with the bill.
Okay. You went through a lot more factors for us to address than I think is necessary based upon our ordinance. For example, at least as I understand it, the LaSalle Sinclair factors don't apply in
Not
this particular
necessarily, no.
case.
But they apply to us because they guide us in establishing a framework of how we present ourselves and present our projects.
And those apply to zoning changes, we're not doing that.
Yes, no, I understand.
Did you reach out to any of the neighbors and see neighbors across the street on the other side of Crystal
We
Lake Road?
did not. We allowed the county public notification process to handle that, and I believe they sent, I don't know how many letters were sent, and the signs were posted, and obviously the public notice was given.
Let's talk, well, one factor that you didn't address that's in our ordinance, our Unified Development Ordinance, I believe it's subsection PP2, has several factors in there. For example, one of the requirements for us to grant this conditional use is that this solar panels shall be located so as to minimize impact to woodlands and wetlands, among other things. I note on the plan, at least on the west side, you were going to be removing trees to the extent necessary.
Well, there are.
That's what the site plan says.
The site plan is a preliminary guide at this stage of the game. We have to go back and work with the county staff to identify exactly, and also have arborists and whatnot, see what some of those trees and woodlands are. We've run into some situations where there are scrub trees, what are called scrub trees.
Right.
And those are typically, if you will, subject to removal. For example, on our Wonder Lake project, we had a section that was or a project rather, that was surrounded by woodlands on 3 sides. And some of them were mature oaks, but the tree survey that went out there and was conducted identified probably only about 15% of mature trees. And we adjusted our site plan to save as many of those oaks as we possibly could by moving it north and widening it.
If I could just cut you off. So what are those, have you done any studies there or looked at those trees to determine whether at least along the west side those are scrub trees or some trees that the county may consider valuable, such as oak, hickory, and some others?
Not at this time, no. But we will be following the same practice protocol that on this project that we followed with Wonder Lake, to try to save trees where possible.
And how about as far as the number of trees along the west side there?
I can't give you a specific number, no.
Other than along the west side, is there any significant amount of trees located throughout this site that you're going to be removing?
The site is essentially tree-free itself. Any trees and or heavy vegetation is surrounding on the perimeter. to the extent, as Colin mentioned, we're not going to try to impact any of that where we can. Avoid, we will, but there are some, we have to provide a security fence around the property as well. So I imagine that that will be something, again, addressed during the permitting process.
As far as the new landscaping that you're gonna be putting in, that's gonna be the light green areas that you see, that we see here along the south side, along Crystal Lake Road, and then along
Yeah,
that.
it extends north and also on the south end of the property extends to the west.
And those will be principally arborvitae.
Yeah.
What are the size of those shrubs that you're gonna be putting in? What size are those?
Specifically, I can't answer that right now. Colin, can you help me?
So the best transplanted trees, the ones we're installing right now down in Champaign, are between 3 to 4 feet to start.
And you anticipate doing the same thing here?
I anticipate doing the same thing. Anything larger, the life expectancy drops as the bushes go up. And we don't want anything too small because obviously it takes longer for them to grow. So there's kind of a sweet spot.
Right.
You're 3 to 4 feet in height. We put them in about 6 foot on spacing so they can fill in without killing the sides of each other. We don't want to see that to happen. And most arborvitaes that we're planting has a growth height of anywhere between 8 to 10 feet tall. Any higher than that, then it's, you know, shade issues, and we got other issues with the solar panel. But those types of bushes will fill in and make almost a nice uniform year-round screening.
Okay, and the overall height of the panels, or the maximum height of the panels as they rotate with the sun will be what?
Approximately 14 plus feet.
So we don't anticipate that the landscape is gonna completely screen the panels, I guess.
Not initially, no. And at some point, I mean, the tip could still be seen, but you would not see the bulk of the panel structures and supporting foundational structures.
Just so that the people here are aware, as I understand it, these panels, the long side will be placed in the east-west direction,
Yes,
and they will rotate
yes,
with the sun.
yes.
Just if I could address a couple of factors. Under our Unified Development Ordinance, subparagraphs PP number 2, they list factors A through K that has to be complied with as far as site design is concerned. I'd just like to address those to confirm that the requirements of that ordinance, at least the specific ordinance, are going to be complied with. First one, A, says solar panels and structures shall be erected no less than 50 feet from the lot line and no less than 150 feet from any residence other than a non-participating, or
Yes.
other than a participating residence, and that's going to be complied with, correct?
Yes.
No structures may exceed 20 feet in height. You're going to be complying with that, that's B. Exterior lighting, C, there isn't any.
Typically, there's only a small light located by the equipment pad itself that will be focused downward and shielded.
Okay. D, solar panels have a surface that minimizes glare.
Yes,
That's what I saw. I mentioned E, shall be situated to minimize impacts to woodlands, savannas, wetlands, and drainage tiles.
yes,
You anticipate being able to comply, at least as far as woodlands. You're going to have to look, though, at the trees and see what's there and see what you'll be removing.
well, again, given the setbacks, the panels will not impact the trees at all. It could be the fence.
Okay.
That would be the major culprit there, if you will. And fencing is, especially with the agricultural fencing, sometimes when you have that up against a wooded strip, you can't even see the fence because you see the trees through it.
We generally request architectural or agricultural type fencing.
Yes.
You will do that.
Yes.
And I believe the fencing we'd like to see it 6 inches above the ground.
Yep.
So the turtles can crawl underneath. or
Oh, yes.
whatever, correct?
We take care of our turtles.
H requires landscaping. You're to be complying with that. Correct.
Yes.
And you will be getting applying for and getting a stormwater permit prior to construction.
Yes.
I have nothing further, Madam Chair.
Hey, Mr. Schnabel.
Your presentation today has been very thorough, and you've touched on so many buttons that we bounce around from case to case on. My only question I didn't hear mentioned today was, where do you stand with your ComEd interconnection agreement?
The interconnection agreement has been amended to adjust for the increase from 5 to 6.5. I don't think we received the actual application back, or approval back, but we do have the application itself. I don't know if we transmitted it yet or not, did we?
Don't believe so. I don't remember seeing that.
Well, we will, but it's been in the system.
I understand why you say that. Did you have approval originally for the 5?
Yes.
Okay, so you're just amending it, expecting to continue to receive.
It took a little bit of engineering, which our partners were very good at. They played and scrunched and manipulated that extra 1.5 into essentially the same footprint, and they did a good job.
All right, that makes sense to me. I don't have anything else.
Ms. Gardner? I have just a few. I was trying to see on your site plan where the inverters will be located.
They are on the equipment pads.
Yes, I cannot see that on the site plan, so if you could point that out.
Okay,
Better off going with that one that has the red dots.
Yeah.
yeah.
There's a red line on there that
Right here.
should give you the pointer.
Hold on, I got to.
We're just above those two wetlands, aren't we?
Yes.
Yeah, we'll get to the.
Right there.
There.
Oh, there they are.
And those are the estimated distances from the properties, the yellow numbers.
Okay, so
And there's two pads right now. The specific location might change as a result of permit plan review, but generally speaking, they will be in that same generic.
So those are the lovely orange dots you referred to earlier.
Thank you. Putting those lines into those orange dots was not fun.
Well, you did a good job, thank you. That looks to be far enough away from any residences to mitigate any sound that would come through. Okay, that's one thing. Now, you're planning on using the cab system for
Yes.
cabling.
Yes.
Can you just give a brief explanation of that for the people in the audience who don't know what that is?
Cab system is essentially something like a coat hanger. They extend a rod or wire across from panel to panel to panel, and the cab system hooks a plastic bracket onto that system, and the cables are all hung into that bracket. It allows for quicker maintenance, easier. It obviously eliminates trenching, probably about 85 or 90% of the trenching that we would otherwise have had to do. And in terms of maintenance and replacement, it's much better. And to make it even better, the cab system comes in black or orange. So I don't know, that's up to those guys. I don't pick colors, just do those.
Thank you. Is there any plan to put batteries on the site, the bus system? None at all? Okay. Now, this site, you said that you own this site, correct?
We have a purchase contract that once we get the CUP approved by the county board, the contract will then take effect. We will own the property. I think we are going to have to do a plat division to specify exactly what portion of the land is ours, but we will own that portion.
Okay. So as owners and developers, will you also be operating the site, or are you selling the rights to that off to somebody else?
To the best of my knowledge right now, we intend to continue operating the site.
Okay, well, that's good news. Now, you also mentioned, you're talking about the panels themselves, that when something happens to a panel and it's now garbage, it's damaged in some way or outdated or whatever, it is not hazardous waste, it is universal waste.
Well, the EPA will be considering it to be that. I mean, there
Universal
are
waste is-
components, there is lead in the panel that will have to be taken care of by an approved recycler. There are more and more of those across the country, and it's the advancing technology, which is, to my knowledge, not here yet, but by the time we start this, it might be, is a lead-free solder that is possible to use on these panels. I can't commit to the use of it on our panels that we will use, but possibility exists. And believe me, any solar developer, assuming it meets standards, they will switch to that to avoid that little red circle that I had on that
Okay,
portion.
so now that it's considered universal garbage, basically, what does that mean? That just means it has to go somewhere special, or does it go
It
like in
still would go-
landfills with everything else?
It
or-
still would go somewhere, how can I put this, a specific recycler that focuses on electronic waste.
Okay,
But the category that some people are concerned about because of, as I mentioned, the leaching and whatnot, which doesn't exist, but they still have the concern about it. The reclassification into universal waste will eliminate officially from the government's perspective that concern.
okay,
You still will have to have specific recyclers that handle it. We can't throw it in Republic dumpsters and have them pick it up.
so it's basically like if you have a TV, an LED TV
Yes.
you need to get rid of, you can't throw it away, you have to bring it to somebody who
Yes.
can handle it.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's that kind of thing, okay. I think that's all I had for that, Bob.
Next.
There's another Bob.
That's me.
You were talking about a 15-foot buffer around the wetlands. Is that typical, or do you ever consider putting panels right across the wetlands?
Depends on the county. We've done solar panels all across the country from our overall company, and then I've done them all throughout Illinois. Up here, we can't do that. The Army Corps wouldn't let you do that, so we don't put them through the wetlands themselves. There are what they call farmed wetlands, where they're wetlands, but the farmer can still farm them. Downstate, you can actually put the panels in those places like that, and we're not proposing to do that here.
Okay, all right, thank you. And have you considered agrivoltaics for this site, which for the audience is
No.
not mowing, it's bringing in sheep to chew down the pretty flowers and things?
No, we have not considered that at this point in time. That was a question, one of the first things I asked when I was hired, I said, are you considering agrivoltaics? Because some of the developers that I've worked for, they have even created panel rows that are so far apart, you can actually get a combine right down, and they can actually farm between the panels.
Row crops?
Yeah.
Huh.
I don't know what kind, but I've seen pictures of the combine going through there, so it's probably not anything more, I would doubt it was even corn. I don't think it was corn. It was probably something lower, maybe soybeans or something.
Pumpkins.
Possibly.
Pumpkins, I know, in Maine, we do blueberries in Maine. They do pumpkins
Under
sometimes.
the panels?
Under the blueberries can go under the panels. They don't grow here, so we would never do blueberries here.
Huh. Okay. Did not know blueberries didn't grow here. Okay.
Well, not the kind that with the commercially viable blueberries. Yeah, the
okay.
blueberries can grow here, but the ones that they can actually be commercially viable would succeed in this type of.
So don't eat the Illinois ones, is what you're saying. Okay. Now, I had the same question as my colleague at the end here had about the trees. It's mentioned on the site plan. There's no arrow or anything to show where this is being considered to remove trees. So this is something you're just putting out there just in case?
We're putting it out there basically to show that we're aware of it.
Okay.
As I mentioned before, basically the vegetation and the trees that are being talked about surround the facility. If you look at the pictures of the site itself, it is flat crop land.
Yes.
There's nothing out there.
I've looked
I
at
didn't
it,
even
I
see
know.
a low bush out there.
Right.
But the vegetation and the trees that surround it, that could have been a property line division or even a windbreak of some sort in years past, that will be where the fence is going. So the fence is less intrusive. The panels are not going up there. We have, I forget what it was, 50-foot setback, I think, for the panels. So there will be a large space between any of our actual construction activity related to the solar aspects and the trees or vegetation, whatever's there. The fence, that's a different story, but a fence is fence posts. It's not the same type of impact that a concrete equipment pad might have.
Right, okay. Now for Colin.
We ran out of Bobs.
I did, no more Bobs here to ask. Now you're talking about using arborvitae's about 6 feet apart.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yes.
Have you considered possibly staggering 2 rows of them? They could still be 6 feet apart, but
We could.
it would fill in a little bit better.
So what we're gonna do is, when we move to the next stage, we're gonna be working with Scott Kuykendall over in the planning department to work with him on seed mixtures and on his landscaping recommendations. So we've done 2 or 3 different sites that had different configurations of those.
Okay,
So based on what the planning and development department does as part of the next step for permitting, we
yeah,
will go with their recommendations
okay.
for what they would want to see.
Yeah, we've asked that on several other sites, and it seemed like such a good idea. It was actually a developer that brought it up and suggested it, and when they're staggered that way, it creates, you're not using any more
Like a
bushes,
fence
so to
panel
speak.
look almost,
Yeah.
correct.
But you now have a very full.
We just don't want to make sure that they have enough spacing so they don't grow into each other.
Right,
That's the
and
thing.
that's why staggering
Correct.
works so well.
Yes, yes.
Okay, all right, that's all I have, thank you.
Ms. Dunn?
I am so happy everybody took all of my questions and answered them and asked more questions for the audience so that they all know what's going on. I have no questions. Everything I had has already been marked off, except a really old thing on page 99 that shows there was a gravel pit out there at one time. Has nothing to do with this, so I'm done.
Mr. Cozen?
Well, take it to Taylor a chance, I think is the expression
Well, break it
for
down.
this time.
We're good.
The access to Crystal Lake Road, has there been a comment by the road authority for what you have proposing at
Dave,
that
I
location?
believe there was a staff comment that was received by the staff from the circulation of the staff report from them, from the DOT. We've had some conversation with them via email, and we are aware that there will be a right-of-way dedication required to meet the required minimum width at this point in time. The access road, we will have to have a culvert and obviously assess the drainage for that portion of the property as well.
And culvert is a symbol that is noted on the drawing, and the dedication will occur without compensation to the underlying landowner. In terms of prior business, do you have any existing fields in McHenry County or?
Wonder Lake, Route 120 and Wonder Lake Road.
Sorry for asking that question because I have acquaintances who like to say they're in Lake County when we visit them. In terms of, this is bifacial,
Yes.
is that correct?
Yes.
And am I correct again in hearing that there's about 15,000 panels?
Yeah, the number is on the site plan. I think it's 15,600. I'm trying to read that.
It's close enough for government work. Then the detail for the panel, you put out a tech sheet on a QCell-Q Tron XL. Just wanted to get specific on that because you also have, given this time of year, the specifications of the wind loads. And you had described this as the better of panels to be
It's
used.
in the top tier of the solar panel industry at this point in time.
Yeah.
As I mentioned, technology is advancing. There could be a better panel that comes out in a week.
But in terms of wind loads, these are the kind of, if I get it, thank you for the spec sheet, it indicates that it can withstand hurricane wind loads.
Pretty close, yes.
Well, pretty close for us in Algonquin Township is that it meets an EF2. We're very sensitive to that because it was on Palm Sunday April 10th and 11th in 1965, when the horrific tornadoes came through, which established that level of EF2 for that. So
Yeah.
these will even withstand should we experience that again or experience as we did last week. Is that
Yeah.
your understanding? In terms of, and that even exceeds the doors and windows of what we would ordinarily have in our home, as I understand it.
I can't speak to that for sure, but I would think it would be, along with the foundations that we use and the security of things being bolted down and screwed into the ground with the piers, I would think that that would be a good chance that that would happen.
And the operating conditions of the field is monitored in a 24/7 capacity?
Yes, it uses SCADA technology that is 24/7, 365. And again, the fire department will play a role in telling us whatever training they need to deal with any emergencies that come up. We try to identify some of the more likely, but there's always something that somebody can come up with that we have to put in there.
So if there was any of those occurrences that you identified in your report, such as the vandalism or even the proverbial turtle, and it disrupts your service, you would receive a record for that and respond?
I would, yes, and if there's a turtle situation, my understanding of the process is that when you have a turtle is identified on site, you stop work and you basically try to get out of its way, and they usually move on, although it may take some time.
Right.
But that's the protocol, and we have to notify IDNR if that happens, and they will tell us, or actually the construction superintendent, what to do, if anything, needs to be done to allow that turtle to enjoy its habitat.
Thank you. And if access, you'd be willing to install a lockbox for the
Yep.
fire department on that?
Yep.
In terms of, there was a photo, figure 11, in your surface maintenance, and it showed panels with grasses. Do you have one, or could provide one of your Wonder Lake, or what your facility is?
But that one is under construction, so I don't think we have any photographs of that at this time.
Crystal Lake, though. We can show one of Crystal Lake.
Just add it to the record because it
I'm
looked-
sorry, sir, would you identify yourself?
Sorry, yeah, Akshay Patel, Surya Powered. We also have another facility in Crystal Lake right behind the McHenry Community College. That one's built.
and show you, it looked very attractive, the one was in there, but in any event, in terms of the tax revenue details, there's no particular service that you'd be requiring from any one of those entities, that you'd be paying a tax bill, you're not likely to utilize a library, you're not likely to send children to the school.
The only services that typically are required, the only utility is electricity, and the only services are typically any response from police or fire in a case of an emergency.
In your testimony, you referenced data centers, but you are not specifically designing this facility
No.
for data centers?
No.
For anything, the electricity is wherever it is
Yeah, I
purchased?
mentioned data centers simply because
Right.
of the
Right.
impact they have in terms of not only space, but also things like water.
Right.
And it's extremely controversial for a number of reasons.
And so it is when I leave a light on in my room. The other issue on sheet 5 of the development drawing, ETV 05CD, there is no, unless it is not otherwise noted, a CAD system in terms of how the cabling goes forward.
No.
You have a typical burial. Where would one see those coat hangers as you described?
There is
on
a
the drawing?
picture, I believe, in our narrative. Did I include it in our narrative?
Okay, but it wasn't on the.
No, this was something that we came up with the intent to use after we had our major submittal. I was able to include it in the narrative, but we were not able to get it on the drawings.
It would be, thank you. And then in terms of, that concludes my questions. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, I just have a few. So the landscaping is going to be outside the fence, is that correct? Or is it going to be inside the fence?
Most of the landscaping should be inside the fence.
Oh, it should be inside,
Yes.
okay. Generally, a lot of applicants have it outside just because then you don't see the fence even at all.
Okay.
So if that's what the county prefers, you're fine with that?
Absolutely.
Yeah, we can go.
Based on
either-
recommendations, we'll
Yeah,
do it.
that's something we can go either way.
I was very interested that you plan on seeding before construction. I've never heard that before, and I think that's a real plus to your application because, you know, it just stabilizes the soil so that you have much less erosion, so.
It's not just, it just makes life easier for the contractor. They're not dealing in mud.
Yeah, kudos to your company for doing that. I think that's terrific. I see a detention basin on the site plan, but it sounds like you're probably not going to need that. So you just put that in just in case?
They were putting that in kind of as a factor of safety to make sure they had enough room for their panels to get their 6.5 megawatts. So they wanted to make sure they had a little play in case they did need to do that. But having gone through this before, we don't need to do that here for this particular project.
Okay. And then as far as the tree line, there's only a tree line on the west and the south boundary, correct? And so would you be comfortable with, you know, I don't know if we make it a condition, but just a request that you don't remove any valued trees if possible on that line?
That would be our intent. I mean, as I mentioned before, we're putting in a fence post. I don't think there would be, I can't imagine where a fence post would dictate the need to remove a tree unless it was something to do with the location on the property line and the setback. And I think we've bent over backwards to try to save all those mature oaks on our Wonder Lake project, and we'll do the same here.
Okay, we appreciate that. And then I'm just interested, the cab system, that's kind of a recent change. The last 2 petitions that we've had come have had the cab. So is that kind of a newer technology? Obviously, it's a lot easier for you, you know, as stated in your testimony, for installation, for not disturbing the soil, for repairing things.
All of the above.
And that's something recent that we can probably see, maybe all petitions probably wanting to do that?
I can't speak for the other developers, but I think it's safe to say that if you see another petition from us, we will be following the cab system, and this time I'll make sure it's on the drawings in time before they're submitted.
We've seen it before, yeah, and I like
The
your
picture is
propane.
good. I mean, I picked out a picture that has the orange, so you can see it. But the maintenance and the lack of unnecessary excavation are the 2 main advantages there. You know where the panels are, you can reach cables. If one cable is bad or whatever, you can, I'm not an electrical engineer, but they can figure out which one it is and replace it rather than dig and try to do that and obviously do some trenching or whatever they do.
It wasn't one of our projects, but if you go on 47 to Elburn, there's one just south of town in Elburn that is just completed construction. I believe they must have used that cab system because as I drive by there, they were never doing any kind of trenching. So I'm assuming that has that cab system in it. So you could actually see it in place because that was just finished construction in the last couple of weeks.
And I like the hangar analogy because from the last application, we saw the pictures, that's exactly what it looks like. Just a little hook there and then everything just kind of slides
I first
through.
saw it, that's the first thing that popped into my mind. It's a hanger in my closet.
Yeah.
Do this.
Okay, so I'm curious about the pumpkins under the panels, because I know the University of Illinois is doing research into alternative crops that can be grown on solar farms.
That's what I've heard about. I don't have any direct experience with how they do it. It's just my understanding that it's something you can put underneath the panels because they can handle some of the shade.
I think it's safe to say that solar developers are trying everything possible to identify what works the best. In Illinois, blueberries aside, I don't know of any specific plant or growth crops that you would have. That's my terminology, not professional. But that's not to say it's not done anywhere else. It would have to obviously be a low growing, flowering plant or crop because when the panel does come around, it's going to be sitting, I'm guessing, probably somewhere like this much off the ground at its low edge. So you wouldn't want to decapitate the plant, that would be counterproductive. However, if they grow well in shade and in the future that might be an option. I don't know that it'll be an option from our company, but I think you may see it and you may see some other plants. I mean, my understanding spinach is a pretty good low crop. And, but I don't know how well that would work in shade. So,
Well, it will get some sun, just not direct sun, probably.
yeah, well, they wouldn't get a lot of sun. That's the whole purpose of our panel. So we try to,
Yeah, you wanna
we try
get
to
as
limit
much
the
sun
sun
as
reaching the
possible.
ground beneath the panel.
Okay, all right, well, thank you for all that information, and I think you did a fine job of anticipating all of our questions and what the audience might have and giving us as much information as possible, so we
We tried.
appreciate that. Ms. Charlo, do you have any questions for staff?
Just one question. I know we've talked a few times about the vegetation along the west and the south sides of the facility. It looks like you've got a 50-foot setback proposed between the panels and the fence line. If there was going to be an issue with any, notable trees in that area, would you be willing to bring the fence line in a bit? I believe the fire district just wants a 20-foot pathway between the panels and the fencing in case.
I think we'd be willing to
If they were in the
consider
way?
that, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, the fence is typically, in my experience, the fence has never been a problem in this type of situation. But if it is, and it can be with root systems, some root systems come up from the ground and they stick up and prevent any normal farming activity. But we would certainly do our best, and we are aware of the value of mature trees, no matter whether it's oaks or hickories or whatever. But there are, typically in this type of perimeter, there's a lot of scrub trees and brush.
That was my only question.
Okay. Anyone from the public have a question regarding the testimony here today? Okay, anybody would like to, I would ask you to come up to my right here, and you'll need to give your name and the address, and then you can ask your questions, and I'll just use the timer on my phone for your 3 minutes.
My name is William Hauk. I live at 1210 South Crystal Lake Road, right across the street. One of the questions we have is, I say we, multiple people that live there. You make a comment about the noise of the motor. You give the decibels. The transformers, you leave out. What is that decibel?
No. The transformers they typically make a hum of a noise. I thought we had a decibel reading.
There's never, you made a comment that you don't have that status, so that's a problem for us.
It typically can't be heard at the property line. So whatever the decibel reading is, I mean, depending on where the pad is located,
We're very quiet
obviously.
out there.
Yeah, and we're pretty far away from housing. Yes?
Nighttime?
No noise.
No noise.
No, well, yeah, no.
No noise.
That's true.
So, yeah, I mean, that's one of the questions I have. It was kind of avoided. It was one part was done, but not the actual transformers. The other thing is, the fence, we have to look at that. And the landscaping, you're saying a fence is 8 foot. I believe the top of the panels are 14 foot, but you're only proposing an 8 foot.
8 to 12.
8 to 12, still doesn't come to the top. So we, all in our 1.5 to 2-story homes, we are now elevated to look out at a beautiful piece of property. We have nothing covered. So those trees have to be higher. It doesn't make sense, we're impacted. Property values, we live in
Is it a question? Only questions right now.
there is an impact to property values. And there's no numbers on that. You haven't provided any numbers. That's what I'm kind of getting at with that.
Well, all I can point to is various studies done by as I mentioned, the Coleman-Resnick real estate analysts done in Lake County. I think they did a couple in McHenry County. They did a couple, I know more than 2. They did about 4 in Kane County. And the consistent result was the same. No significant adverse impacts. And when there was an impact, it was usually speculation driven. Not paired sales. They use paired sales technique, which, and I can't speak exactly what the technology is, but it's done over time. If you have a solar farm and you put your house on the market immediately upon approval, you did the same thing 6 months later, that price, whatever you could expect might be different. You could do the same whether the solar panel is, or the solar farm is there or not. We don't know.
Has there been any impact to what the solar does to the ground? You make, that these panels are non-recyclable.
They are recyclable.
So, is that my time?
Yeah, your turn.
Okay.
Does anyone else have a question?
Hi, my name's Linda Lindahl. I live 1315 South Crystal Lake Road, and I will be impacted by these ugly things you're putting up, other than the beautiful view we have now. I thought,
Question is for him.
okay, why would you even consider putting solar panel farm in a residential area where there are places around businesses and empty lots that can be filled?
The placement of and location of a solar farm is determined by a number of factors. First and foremost is the topography, which is required to be flat. The lack of trees and wetlands, which this has minimal wetlands and obviously no trees. And also the proximity to a ComEd substation that has the capacity to take the electricity from the farm itself that is driven into the grid. Those are the basics, and then add on top of that there has to be zoning that allows for it. All of those factors are met on this site. But perhaps the most important factor is the landowner, the property owner, has to be willing to sell and develop the property as is. A lot of the business locations, a lot of rooftop locations that you would think would be perfect for solar farms, they just don't want to go through the bother.
No, because it's not patting their pocket enough, I guess. I'm sorry, I'm totally against this.
Well, that's a comment for later, not now.
Yeah, I also want to know, you said in minimal radiation, okay? Times that by how many panels you're putting, what impact is that? I mean, I have horses.
I'm not quite getting what the question is.
The radiation off of all these panels that you're putting up.
It's an electromagnetic field.
Yeah.
You have, again, how many electrical appliances do you have in your house? They all produce an electromagnetic field.
Yeah, but there's only 5.
Well, you have houses left, right, behind you, across the street, down the road. The main electromagnetic fields that are produced here come from the inverters. There's 40 of those. They're on the equipment, or the equipment pads. The transformers also produce some. But there's not any significant cumulative event. It's not like an exponential or a pile on top, one on top of the other. In most cases, it's not even noticeable at the measurable at the property line.
Okay, how about, you said about the trees, you'll be cutting them down. My property has.
No, I didn't say we'd be cutting them down.
Some. My property has a fence line. I think someone said they're not gonna put a fence if there's a fence line. Okay, I'm cut off because.
Well, if I may,
Yeah,
I'll
go ahead,
respond.
answer.
We did not say we were going to cut any trees down.
Right, I
Instead,
understand
we
that.
are going to try to preserve as many trees as possible and only impact those that are directly obstructing the fence.
Okay, but the fence is gonna be next to my property. I have trees right there. My fence doesn't go straight back because of the trees. It gets indented. So part of my land looks like it's part of the land next to it. I have a plot survey, I can show you. I don't have it on me, but.
We will be following the survey in the location of our fence line. As I mentioned with Kim's comment, we will consider moving the fence as we need to avoid damaging any of the trees. And it will be an agricultural fence. We're not putting up this chain link fence with barbed wire or anything like that.
Does anyone else have a question? Then at this time, we'll move on to testimony from the public, starting with our staff. And Charlotte, would you give us your report, please?
Sure. So the subject property is zoned A1 Agricultural District. To the north and east is also A1 Agricultural District. To the south is E3 with a conditional use. There is a church to the south there, as well as Village of Bull Valley, and then also to the west is the Village of Bull Valley. The subject property is currently used for agriculture. To the north, south, and west is also agriculture. To the south, there is that government institutional church use, as well as single-family residential and vacant to the east. The future land use designation of the subject property is estate. However, I will note that the 2050 future land use plan, which has been adopted by the county, does call for agriculture for future use. The plat of survey I did just want to note, so the current property is approximately 77 acres, but you can see the designation of the 37 acres on the south side. There is the parcel that is the subject property that would be purchased by the applicant if the conditional use is granted. I believe I had anything further. I did note, just for the fence detail here, it does show a 2-inch gap at the bottom, but there was testimony given about the 6-inch gap, so I think this was probably just a preliminary drawing at that point. I did go out to the site. The zoning sign was posted. I do believe that all of the state and county regulations have been met. I did just want to put one thing on the record. I received an email from the McHenry County Division of Transportation. They just wanted to make everyone aware that there is a future roadway extension proposed for the future, basically connecting Curran Road to Crystal Lake Road. I'm not sure if the applicants were aware of that. They said it's not included in their 5-year transportation plan, so it is years into the future, but they're not sure where that's going to connect up along Crystal Lake Road. It may or may not affect this subject property, but they did just want that on the record. And that's all that I have.
Okay, on the NRI, it shows no NRCS wetland and no aided wetlands. So basically, these are farmed wetlands, would that be correct?
I don't know the designation from the wetland delineation. I believe that is correct. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
Okay.
Yep.
Does anyone else have a question for him?
Excuse me.
Yes.
Sorry. Any comment from any of the adjoining municipalities, governmental units?
No, we did not receive anything.
Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Okay, at this time, anyone who, from the public that wants to make a statement, now's your opportunity to do so. Again, you'll need to give your name and address, and you'll have 3 minutes. Anyone who has been under oath and is wanting to do that, now's your opportunity. Does anyone want to make a statement? Okay, you do, sir?
It's just a statement, we're under oath, or doesn't?
You're under oath, yeah. If you're under oath, then you need to come up here and your name and address, and you can give your statement.
The name again is William Howe, 1210 South Crystal Lake. I have a letter from the city of McHenry, from the mayor, Wayne Jett. I believe you guys all have a copy, possibly, of him opposing the this due to the fact of the impact that on behalf of the city of McHenry, I'm writing to express my opposition to the proposed solar farm development located at 1207 South Crystal Lake Road within the city limits, within the city 1.5 mile planning jurisdiction. The city recently adopted a Vision 2050 primarily for the larger residential lots and surrounding lands intended to remain as open space and natural. The city council recognizes the importance in advancing our diverse and sustainable energies electric grid. For future generations, it is not to support the conservation of the area designed for future residential growth, or, I don't have my glasses, my apologies. It's all blending together.
While the city council recognizes the importance of advancing a diverse and sustainable electric grid for future generations, it does not support the conversion of areas designed for future residential growth to accommodate commercial solar, particularly during a period of housing instability, with Illinois home prices having surged nearly 50% over the past 7 years. For these reasons, and in the spirit of the sound and sustainable planning practices, I respectfully urge Chairman Bueller and the McHenry County Board to vote no on proposed solar farm development. Yours truly, Wayne Jett.
I have something to say.
Hold on.
Okay,
Sorry, I can't read I forgot my glasses, so I apologize. I just want to reiterate, it's something that we know it's going to be residential. That's what we've always been told. Eventually, knowing it's 20 years out, 30 years out, I get it. But the question we have is we lose value. I know we're going to lose value. We have very nice properties that we have. We have unique properties because we are on 5 to 7 acre lots that are very desirable. If any one of us want to sell in the next 2-3 years, we are going to lose major money that you can't find these properties now, but with the agriculture that we do, like raise our chickens, we have a sheep farm, the gentleman down the street from me, there's horses there. All this stuff is people aren't gonna wanna buy the properties if we wanna sell and retire later on. So these are kind of where our prices have come up and we're gonna lose because people don't want them. When we look out, no one's gonna see 77 acres of solar farm. And it's on a busy road that is vital to McHenry, Crystal Lake, and McHenry County for all the tax dollars it would get from residential compared to 49,000 extra. We'd be a lot more money towards residential later. Thank you for your time, appreciate it.
Sorry, Kim, did you get a letter from McHenry?
No, it sounded like it might have been addressed to the county board because it said Chairman, but we did not receive that.
Okay.
I'm Renee Miller, 1214 South Crystal Lake Road in McHenry. I'm an original. My dad built this house in 1979, so I have been in and out of this house since 1980. I am an original one. When my dad passed away, it came to me. When I die, it goes to my son. This has absolute sentimental. I'm gonna cry. I don't wanna see this solar farm. I've seen all the people that have lived here and everybody. And to see this go up across the street, I saw the farmhouse that was across the street. I saw the barn burn. I saw the house torn down. I've seen the farm. I've seen the land farmed. And to see this solar farm and to see what Linda's gonna have to see next door to her, it's a slap in the face. It's an absolute slap in the face. And who's gonna make the money? Them. Do I wanna see that? Absolutely not. And is our house value gonna go down? Absolutely. I don't care what they say. I don't care that they're gonna make the money. Us getting up every morning, the people next door that have the farm next door, that have sheep, we farmed this land. We've lived on this property. My dad had cows and everything else. This is farmland. And now you're gonna take it away and put a solar farm up, and maybe we're gonna put some pumpkins. They have no idea what farmland is. And now you're gonna take that away from future generations and from people that know what farmland is. So if this is what makes y'all happy, go for it. But I am so opposed to it. And so are the people that know what farmland is.
There's no applause. No. Anyone else want to make a statement? Okay, so I just want to clarify that letter from the mayor of McHenry sounds like it was addressed to the county board chairman, not to this board, so we have not had any correspondence. Mary?
I'm sorry. He's saying it was to him.
My apologies.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So we're just clarifying that, correct,
Yes,
Kim?
correct.
We received no,
Right, we have not received any
for
letters.
our purposes, we received no correspondence, no official correspondence.
Correct.
Okay. Okay, do you have a closing statement, sir?
No, I think we.
And maybe if you would do me one favor, would you address the issue of I would like to know how high the panels are when they are totally horizontal.
I
Would they
can't,
be below the 8 foot?
it would
of
be
the
right
landscape?
about, my hunch would be right about 8 foot. I can't specifically tell you that from memory, but if you look at the details that we provided on our plan, I think we show it at tilt. You can look at the height of the foundation of the pillar. I think it's right about 8 feet. Does that sound right, guys?
Yeah.
And the 14-foot point, there it is. The 14-foot point is when it's at its highest tilt.
So about noon.
Yeah, and then it will start to rotate again slowly down, and then in the afternoon, and we'll go back up to
Not noon.
14.
At noon, it's gonna be flat. It's
Yeah,
in the
it'll be
morning and
flat.
Oh,
night.
I'm sorry, yes.
Morning and
Dusk and
evening.
dawn.
Dusk and dawn.
Dusk and dawn.
Yeah,
Dusk and dawn.
but then the height of the mounting fixture is basically what I think is what we're talking about. And I don't see a dimension on that, but looking at what I see on the other dimensions there, it's probably less than 8 feet. Probably something closer to 6.
Although the drawing says not to scale.
No, I know, I'm going by what I see, that's all I can say.
Okay, okay.
That
So,
type of detail is usually handled in the construction phase when you have specific dimensions and whatnot, so, yeah.
so back to the closing statement. You've answered my
Okay.
question, thank you.
Regarding a closing statement, I think our closing statement has to be essentially the entire presentation. We have done every single thing we think the ordinance and the code requires. We have tried to put together and go above and beyond in terms of identifying issues that have been presented to this board and to also to the county board about problems, if you will, that have been envisioned. We are limited in our rebuttal to the questions and the comments to the facts that we have. And the facts that we have are presented in our report, or in the presentation, and in our narrative in even greater detail. I would like to add, regarding conversations with other municipalities or jurisdictions, we have had an initial email distribution and a follow-up email distribution with all of the surrounding jurisdictions. We did get a response from the Fire Protection District. We got a limited email response from the City of McHenry Planning Office, but we did not receive any response from any of the other jurisdictions to either our initial email distribution of the plan or a follow-up roughly about 2 months later. Nobody bothered to comment on anything. Now, the comments we did receive came from the staff, basically from the Department of Transportation, who one gentleman is retiring, and he brought his successor into the loop as well. So we were pretty much aware of what that is going to be required from. But other than that, and obviously staff reports, we've done everything we could to notify all of these jurisdictions of what these impacts might be and what we are proposing on the site. And I think we've tried to cover just about everything. I think we meet the standards within any reasonable expectation. And if there are adjustments, as I've indicated, conditions of approval, either from this board or from the county board, we will either adopt them as is or work with them to change them to make them mutually acceptable. Things like the fence, the height, etc. What's the gap height? Sorry. That's about all we can do at this stage.
Okay, so at this time, we will close the hearing portion of this meeting.
Excuse me, Madam Chair.
And we only have six members present. You're entitled to 7 votes on this, so I ask if you would like to go forward today.
Go.
Okay. All right.
They're the boss, I just do what they say.
Okay, so we'll move on to the voting portion, or the voting portion of the meeting. We have some proposed conditions up on the screen. All the zoning board members have received these in advance, and they have been also posted online for any member of the public to see them. Does any member of the zoning board of appeals want to go through those, or are you comfortable with them as presented?
I'm comfortable with them as presented.
I'm good.
Madam Chairman, I make a motion to accept the proposed conditions as presented.
Second.
Been moved by Ms. Donner, seconded by Mr. Koenig to approve these conditions. Any discussion? Then I'll call for the vote. Ms. Gardner?
Yes?
Mr. Cozen?
Yes.
Mr. Schnabel?
Yes.
Ms. Donner?
Yes, aye.
Mr. Koenig?
Yes.
And I'll vote yes, so these conditions are approved 6-0. At this time, I would entertain a motion to approve this request.
Madam Chairman, I propose that we accept the petition as presented with the conditions attached.
Second.
It's been moved by Ms. Donner, seconded by Mr. Koenig to approve this request. Discussion, Ms. Donner?
We are under, as the chairman has mentioned, some quasi-judicial board here. We are required, if all the information brought to us is presented and meets the standards that the state has told us, we have to say yes. This presentation is among the best that I've seen in the year and a half I've been on this board every week for solar stuff. I'm always impressed that people are willing to see no change to what is already there. And this particular change, as the gentleman with the petition has mentioned, is an interim situation. We don't know in 25 years if we'll even be doing solar, because there could be nuclear fusion. There could be all kinds of things that might change. They have a plan for decommissioning, what it takes, where it goes. We've heard the information from people who worry about their values. I worry about the value of my home too. There has been nothing that I have heard in the last year and a half that actually suggests that anybody who's come in here has not been able to sell their homes, as an example. With that, and noting that we have fulfilled all of the information needed, Mr. Koenig, you always know the citations that we fulfilled, the 16.30. You know those better than I do. I'm not used to doing this.
I have it here.
Please,
Okay.
in addition, can I do that?
No, he can do that.
I can do
No,
it.
I want him to do it, because that's the legal part that goes with
I will
this
do that.
for our tracking.
So you're finished? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, we'll just go down the line then. Ms. Gardner?
I really don't have a problem with this site as being a solar farm. It does seem to be one of the more open ones. There's very little to do other than put the solar panels up and operate the site. The people who would be affected are across the street from it. There's always a lot of blowback with solar farms. Nobody wants to look at them. That's the way it is. And as I've said in other hearings, a long time ago, there was no farm there. There wasn't agriculture there. There was trees there. And the people who moved across the street from those trees had a fit when all those trees were cut down and corn was planted because it was so ugly to look at compared to the trees. Things change. They always change. And there's really not much you can do about what changes around you. You have all the control of what changes on your own property. Somebody across the street wants to do something different, that's their prerogative to try and do that. I believe in solar power. I think it's a good way to go as things are right now. I know there are other types of energy production that are in the works and are actually being used in some places, but this is where we are now, and this is our best bet for increasing energy that we all use now. I think that the petitioners might in the future want to actually reach out to some of the neighbors, not just the jurisdictions, but to the neighbors that live around there, to give them a little bit of heads up and a little bit more information to make it a little bit more palatable to them. I have lived across from a landfill, which is not a place anybody would want to live. But when I bought the house, it was a big open field, and they put in a landfill right in back of me. So I understand the angst here. However, when I sold my house, it went for more than I asked. So anyway, I will move on to the next person.
Mr. Cozen.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. The short answer is that I will be supporting the petition that is before us in recognition of public record and its accessibility going forward in the future. This public record is accessible without need of any specified access or personnel. It is as much a public record as anything we can find in any location of a library or as simple in today's technology on our phone. This goes to the point of the questions asked are very germane, because a person such as me does not know how many leaded connections exist on the current coffee maker that I have in my home, and then what is the risk of the material composition of that outdoor barbecue grill, and at what time and when in my life will I be putting others at risk. But here we have a record that is accessible, and more than that, we also know that we have a balance. And on this occasion, and on many of these petitions, we learned that the heavy scale is towards Springfield and not here in Woodstock. It is a difficult lesson to learn, but it is a lesson that we receive on each and many of these conditions. And lastly, it's the subscription basis. We now have the ability to subscribe on the moment. We have the ability to determine which and when and how often we need to purchase our gasoline, whether or not we get the best seat in the local restaurant. And Illinois does not as yet permit us, as Duke Energy is offered in South Carolina, the purchase of electricity by the minute. And that would be a discussion that me and my wife would have more often. And with that, I yield, and thank you, Madam Chair.
Mr. Schnabel.
I very much sympathize with the folks that don't like this idea. I remember back when I moved into my current house 33 years ago after I built it. It was a year or two later. And I believe it was Cellular One at the time, moved forward with a plan to put a 200-foot cell tower right on my neighbor's backyard lot line. And at the time, cell towers had meetings like this from residents that were complaining. And now they're so ubiquitous, no one hardly thinks twice about them anymore. I see this as turning into something like that. It's utility scale, state mandated, they have their reasons. It is what it is. I have to support the petition.
Mr. Kernick.
Just a couple of comments. As Madam Chair indicated when this hearing opened up, we are a quasi-judicial body, which means we act as a judge, and we also act as essentially a jury, applying the law to the facts. We're here to make decisions, not because we like to make decisions, not because we're happy with whatever decisions we make, but we're here to make decisions, we're here to apply the facts to the law, and we're obligated to apply the facts to the law. The General Assembly, back a couple years back, enacted what was referred to earlier as Public Act 102-1123, which essentially set forth for us what the standards are and what the factors we can consider in deciding whether or not to allow a conditional use permit for a solar farm. The General Assembly decided, I think it was the goal back by the time we get to 2040 or 2050, I'm not going to be here. A lot of you people ain't going to be here, but to be 100% renewable. And towards that end, they passed that public act that I referred to. I went through with with the presenter here, with essentially 7 or 8 factors that are the only factors we can consider. And unfortunately, value of property and impact on property values is not a factor that we can consider based upon what the General Assembly told us. We have, under our ordinance, we have our Uniform Development Ordinance 16.56.030 PP. That sets forth approximately 15 factors that we can consider. Here they presented more factors in support of their position than they really needed to. The application, they have all of the requirements for the application. They have to have a threatened endangered species consultation. They have to have a site plan with all the improvements. You saw that. They have to have anything else that the planning department requires. They've submitted all of that. They then go on to say for site design, there's subparagraphs A through K. Each of those paragraphs they've complied with. Solar panels, they specify how far they have to be away from homes. They say they can't exceed 20 feet in height. They have to have lighting, has to comply with our ordinance. There's not going to be any lighting. Solar panels have to have a surface that minimizes glare. They've complied with that. Shall minimize impact to woodlands and wetlands. They've proved that. They have to prevent erosion. They have to comply with our fencing requirement. If it's within 500 feet of a non-participating unit, they have to have landscaping. Prior to issuance of the permit, they have to have a plan for monitoring the landscaping and maintain it. And prior to the hearing, they have to enter into an agricultural impact mitigation agreement. And prior to the permit being issued, they have to provide an executed road use agreement with the Illinois Department of Transportation. That's it. They've complied with all those factors. They don't have to do anything more. They don't have to show anything more. We're not happy with what we do. We understand that this, for a lot of you people, this is an emotional decision. But we have to apply the facts without emotion and apply the facts to the law. So that said, I'm in favor of this as well.
And I would concur with Mr. Koenig, and a lot of the standards that we have in our county ordinance is to try and make the visual impact as minimal as possible so that the neighbors, you know, if they see it, it's barely visible. And using the evergreen type plantings versus woodland type species makes it so that year round you will have minimal sight of this. And as well, you know, the standards that we have just to make sure that people don't hear noise. You know, we try and limit any negatives that we can. I've also seen the Cohn-Resnick reports on the property values, and I've seen what the petitioner has presented, and that, you know, sometimes you think it'll affect your property values, but really it doesn't. It really doesn't. And I think if, like, my dairy farm was on the opposite side of the road, it would have a lot more noise and a lot more things that people might not like versus a solar farm. So, but that's neither here nor there. The fact is that they met the standards that they need to meet as far as the state and as far as the county. And so we are required as a quasi-judicial body to honor this request. So I will call for the vote. Ms. Gartner?
Yes.
Mr. Kozak?
Yes.
Mr. Schnabel?
Yes.
Ms. Donner?
Aye.
Mr. Koenig?
Yes.
And I will vote yes. So this will go to the county board with a 6-0 vote approving this request. At this time, if there's nothing else to come before us, this hearing is closed.